Thank you to the Tri-City Collective. Thank you to IMEX. Thank you to Pinnacle Speakers, and thank you to MPI for having me here, because I'm going to be talking about a topic that is super important, and that is how to work with and lead people not like you. So quick show of hands, how many of you are working with or leading someone or people who are not like you, however you want to define the not like you? Right, should be every single person in the room. Okay, that concludes my presentation. Thank you. Now, we're changing, and when I talk about people not like you, the reason I use those words not like you as opposed to the word diversity is because I find when people say the word diversity, most people think very narrowly about that. They think racial and ethnic diversity, and that's super important, and we can talk about that, but I don't think that's the only way that we can be diverse. So we're changing in the United States here, we're changing all over the world. We're changing politically, we're changing socially, we're changing fiscally, and we're changing religiously. We're changing in every way there is. And when we look at diversity, my definition of diversity is any way you can be different from me, okay? So any way you can be different from me. Do you have children? No. Great. 99% of the time, that question works. Seriously, I need a woman with a kid. All right, thank you. Do you have children? I don't. So we're both white, we're both women. Let's just say we're the same age. I can tell you're way younger, don't be a hater, okay? Just go with me. So let's say we're both women, we're both the same race, we're the same age, we're the same gender. Let's say we live in the same zip code and we even make the same household income. On paper, she and I would look the same. But you know and I know that if you've got kids and I don't, we're actually going to be very different. The decisions that you make and the priorities and pressures on you as a parent are very different than those on me. And that has nothing to do with race, ethnicity, age, income, zip code, or anything. It simply has to do with parenthood. So diversity comes in many forms, and aside from all the obvious things like generational differences, color of skin, here's some ways that you might not have thought about it from a work standpoint. How about introverts versus extroverts? I'm an extrovert, can you tell? My husband is an introvert. He hates people. So he seriously does. I mean, like the doorbell rings and he's like, can you get it? Yeah. How about creative versus analytic thinking, right? Somebody who's an engineer or an accountant is going to think very differently than someone who's a graphic designer. How about morning people versus night owls? Right? How about experience? A meeting planner who's been working for 3 months is very different than a meeting professional who's been working for 3 decades. International perspective versus country specific. Communication styles. You know, somebody who would prefer to have a face-to-face meeting is very different than somebody who would find that an imposition and be like, just text me. And here's one. I was doing this presentation one time, and this guy yells out from the audience. I think he thought it was an interactive exercise. And he goes, I got one for your list. And I said, what's that? And he goes, Apple people versus Google people, right? So all these different ways we can be diverse. And one of the ways that you see diversity around us is that companies are starting to get real and brave. Marketing is always about showing people images that they can relate to. That's the #1 rule in marketing. Show people images that they can relate to, which is why every ad you're ever going to see in your life for financial services and retirement features people with gray hair. Because at that stage of your life, that's what you think about. You don't think about that when you're 25. You think about it when you're 45, 55, and 65. So here's some ways that you can see the diversity seeping into the culture all around us. People want to see the real. They want to see people who look like them. Cheerios in the United States is the #1 selling brand of cereal. Cheerios did an ad last year, a television ad, featuring an interracial couple. How many saw it? For those of you who didn't see it, here's what it went. It went like this. White mom, black dad, adorable little girl. And the little girl says, Mommy, why do we eat Cheerios? And Mommy says, because it's good for Daddy's heart. And then the little girl goes over to Daddy who's napping in the living room on the couch, and she pours the box of Cheerios on his chest because it's good for his heart. That was it. It's adorable, but never once did they go, and check out our cool interracial family, right? They didn't have to, they just showed a family. Speaking of families, Honey Maid in the United States, the nation's only graham cracker? Honey Maid is doing a campaign right now that features no models and no actors, nothing but real people and real families and real consumers of crackers. So one of their families is a gay couple with children, wholesome dadvertising from Honey Maid. They're also realizing that real drives business. For example, 40% of people 18 to 35 have 4 or more tattoos. not a tattoo, 4 or more. So back to my premise of people relate to images that look like themselves, then if an entire generation of people have ink, shouldn't we be showing that? Well, here's a bank in Philadelphia that is doing just that. And so you could see that this woman has like a cool edgy haircut, but look at her left arm. It's an entire sleeve of ink, and this is a bank. CoverGirl embraces diverse beauty. CoverGirl now has their first Muslim model. She pushes mascara. Because if you're an observant Muslim woman, you cover your hair. If you cover your hair, then when I look at you, all of the focus is on your eyes and lips. And fashion-forward Muslim women want to look just as attractive as anyone else. CoverGirl also now has their first cover boy, because they've realized that makeup is not just for women. And this guy has like 11 million followers on YouTube. He does great tutorials. Barbie gets real for the first time. How many people played with Barbie growing up? Right. So this is what Barbie looked like for us growing up. Completely unrealistic body standards, don't get me started. But now, this fall, they're introducing for the first time ever Curvy Barbie, who actually, yes, can I get an amen on that? Yes. Well, and let me just riff on this for one more minute, okay? Let me take you back to show you how far we've come on this. In 1965, Mattel introduced Slumber Party Barbie. Slumber Party Barbie looked like this, and she came with little accessories like a robe and slippers and a little hairbrush, because that's what we girls do, right? And weirdly, a scale. A scale that was permanently set to 110. And in case you don't weigh 110, and I don't know anyone who does, in case you don't weigh 110, it also came with a book. I'm not kidding. A book that was called How to Lose Weight, and it had one page in it, and that page said, don't eat. We're coming along. We'll talk about this afterwards. I can go on for days. Brawny salutes strong women. You know, we all know this guy. I live in Denver. We call this look lumberjack sexy. Yeah. So Brawny paper towels. But Brawny this year was like, wait a minute, why should men own strength? Women are strong too. So now they have the Brawny woman, and they're doing a campaign that's called Strength Has No Gender. Who's your Shiro? Yes. Go buy some Brawny. The new Gerber baby is real and irresistible. For 5 decades, we've had an illustration, not actually even a baby. Now we actually have an adorable baby. And not only is this baby super adorable, this baby has Down syndrome. Go Gerbers. And speaking of Down syndrome, Target ads feature children with Down syndrome. Target makes their money primarily on children's clothing and children's toys. Don't all children wear clothing? Don't all children play with toys? I think what's cool about this is in my lifetime, I've seen a shift. Children like this were once hidden away. We don't hide children like this away anymore. We celebrate them. So those are just some of the ways that you can see the diversity all around us. But let's get back to business. Our differences can actually create friction at work. When you're working with someone who's not like you, you're not going to see eye to eye on everything. So it can create friction. One of the most common things I get is older executives that bring me in to speak for them, and they're like, what about millennials? What do we do about these millennials? They don't have a work ethic. They want to leave at 4 o'clock and go to their yoga class. They want to bring their dog to work. Yeah, what about these millennials? I can't stand the millennials. And I'm always telling them, if you feel the friction, that chances are the other person's feeling the friction too. So these guys are like, rah, 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 millennials. But the millennials are like, how come he can't open an attachment? All right. So when you're working with people who are not like you, it can actually get uncomfortable. But in business, it's not okay to admit that. No, can't do it. It's too risky. Your job could be at risk. You say the wrong thing to the wrong person, you're out of a job. Or maybe you're reprimanded and you're told that you're not on the diversity bandwagon. Or you could be branded with a horrible, horrible label, like bigot, racist, sexist, misogynist, xenophobe, Islamophobe, homophobe. The list goes on and on. So you keep quiet. But inside, you're struggling. You're still working with people who frustrate you, but you can't say anything, so you're struggling. I'm here to tell you that if you're struggling at work, you are normal. You are normal. Psychologists show that this struggle when working with people not like you is actually normal. It does not mean you're a bad person, and you are absolutely not alone. Your discomfort is completely normal. It is normal to feel that friction. So why is working with people not like us important in the first place? Forget the kumbaya, we are the world stuff. I'm all about it, but I'm talking about business right now. And nobody does anything in business unless it's good for business. So why do businesses care so much about diversity and working with people not like you? It's because if you surround yourself with people who are just like you, you could miss something big. It's that simple. You could miss something big. So not to be sexist, but I'm going to direct this question to the women in the room. Ladies, do you know this brand? Show of hands. Even if you've never drunk it, if you've just seen it, that you're familiar with it. Yeah, 3/4 of the room knows this brand. Here's the quick backstory on this. Bethany Frankel had this idea for a low-calorie, good-tasting cocktail. And she approached every single major liquor company with her idea, and every single one of them turned her down. She went ahead, built the brand on her own, and 2 years later, after selling 400 million cases of Skinny Girl, Beam, as in Jim Beam, bought her brand back from her for $100 million. The same brand that they took a pass on just 24 months earlier. Why? What happened? Here's what I think. And again, not to be sexist, but let's just put it out there and be real. Women metabolize calories differently than men. We just do. It's harder for us. Can I get an amen on that? Thank you. And believe me, the older you get, it ain't going to get any easier. Anyway, women have a harder time metabolizing calories than men. It's harder for us. So what I believe happened is she went into these conference rooms pitching her little heart out for her concept, and there were men in the room who couldn't relate. They weren't being dismissive. They were just like, nah, I don't really know if anybody would buy that. And I promise you, if there'd been a woman in the room, that woman would have been like, hold up, are you kidding? I got 25 friends that'll do a focus group on it right now. So they missed something big. Good for Beam that they got on board, but essentially you can miss something big. So let's put some science behind it. I talked about how your discomfort is normal. Here's the proof of that. So psychologists wanted to find out how people feel about working with people not like them, and they wanted to take race and ethnicity off the table. So what they did was they used sorority sisters and fraternity brothers as the control group. And they gave the sorority sisters and fraternity brothers a murder mystery to solve, and they gave them 20 minutes to do it with clues. 5 minutes into the exercise, certain ones of the groups were joined by a fourth sorority sister or a fourth fraternity brother, but from a different house. So you with me? In other words, they're still all college students, they're all in fraternities and sororities, but not the same one. This one is an outsider. Okay? So what happened? As you might predict, yes, of course, those who had the outsider solved the murder mystery better, faster, more accurately, a greater percentage of the time. Significantly so, measurably so, from 29% to 60%. But here's where it gets interesting. When asked afterwards, congratulations, oh my gosh, you won. Your sorority won, or your fraternity won. Bravo! Didn't that feel awesome? Isn't winning great? What they heard was all these participants were like, oh my gosh, that was miserable. I had no idea we were even succeeding. All we did was bicker. I can't believe we won. It didn't feel like we were winning. I didn't think we were being effective at all. Interestingly, bottom line, working with diverse team members felt harder, but produced a better outcome. So what I tell you here is, if you are working with people who are not like you and it feels hard, you're not crazy, and you're not doing it wrong. It is hard. That's why people don't do it. No, really, we gravitate to things that are less hard. You are not crazy, and you are not doing it wrong if you're working with people who are different from you. If it feels hard, it's because it is hard. So stay at it, though, because it produces a better outcome. So how do you do that? How do you actually stay at it? I'm going to cover 7 ways to work with people not like you. The first one is break the ice with your diverse team. This is really important. You might be working with all kinds of people, but you don't really know anything about them, or the team members don't know much about each other. Pull your team together and have a meeting where it's not about PowerPoint and graphs and business. Just say, we're going to take 30 minutes and we're just going to share some things about each other. Ask them to share something about themselves, but you got to make it safe. You can't be like, Tell us about your felony arrest, okay? No, you gotta give them easy things that are safe, like where do you call home? Or a perfect Saturday would be, or what's one thing you're grateful for this week? I had a boss one time that did this, and it was awesome because he introduced this topic and he said, what's something interesting that you're doing right now? And a guy that I kind of knew in the accounting department shared with us that he and his wife were in the process of adopting a little baby girl. Now that was kind of cool and everybody went, aw, but here's what changed for me. Suddenly I no longer saw Mark as just a capable accountant. Suddenly I saw him as that and also a doting dad. So every time I saw him, I had something to go on. I was like, hey Mark, how's your little girl? And he'd be like, oh, she's learning her ABCs, driving me crazy singing that song, you know. And for 2 years, hey Mark, how's your little girl doing? Now, that gave us something to go on, and I would have never known that if it hadn't been for this exercise. Oh, and by the way, do you think if I needed something from accounting, I got it? Heck yeah, I did, because I expressed interest in him as a person. Speaking of that, find common ground. When I was expressing interest in Mark as a person, we had common ground. We had something we could talk about. I am thrown together with people that all the time on the road that I'm never going to see again. So I become an expert at making small talk and finding common ground. So I'll use anything to start a conversation. It doesn't really matter what. You got a Cubs hat on? I'll be like, hey, you like the Cubs? Me too. Not really, but I'll just say it, okay? Or, hey, that's a really cool necklace. My mom makes jewelry. No, she doesn't. But I'll just say it. Where do you find your pieces? I hear you like fly fishing. Is it hard to learn? You can even do the whole lame thing like, I wonder if they're ever going to fix the heat in this building. Are you as cold as I am? I mean, it doesn't really matter. You got to find something to go on because you've got nothing. But once you find something, even if it's like, are you as cold as I am, it will not be as awkward. But expect it to feel a little awkward in the beginning because you have nothing to go on. You're struggling to find common ground. So once again, if it feels awkward, you're not doing it wrong. This is part of the process, but the good part is it's only going to be awkward once. It's only going to be awkward once. Just like Mark and his adopted little girl, once I knew that, we had something to go on, and we built on that for years. Build trust. For those of you who are leading a team, or even those of you who are working with people informally, it is about trust, but psychologists say that there's two kinds of trust. One is common trust. Common trust doesn't have to be earned. We grant it to others automatically. You do it every day, you don't even think about it. When you're driving to work, you have to trust that the person coming at you on the other side of the road isn't going to cross the median and crash into you. When I flew in here last night, I had to trust that the pilot was well-rested and well-trained. When you eat out at a restaurant, you have to trust that the chef isn't poisoning you. You have no choice but to trust people that you will never know with your life. But in business, it's about vulnerability trust. This is important because vulnerability trust is what solidifies teams, but it has to be cultivated and it has to be reciprocated. This last part is really important because when people look at this image, they always focus on the archer, and they always focus on like, wow, that guy's aim really has to be true. And it's true. But I also look at that and I go, yeah, but she has to not flinch. Because that doesn't work if she moves, right? They have to trust each other. So how do you build vulnerability trust? One way is to talk straight and be honest even when it's hard. Even when it's hard. I had a boss one time that wooed me away from another company, brought me into another company, gave me a nice salary, and I had a signing bonus. I was supposed to get the signing bonus about 12 weeks into the job. 6 weeks into the job, it was a very large company, and he comes to me and he says, Kelly, sit down, I have some difficult news. And he sat me down and he said, I know that this is what we agreed on regarding your signing bonus, but things have changed. And if any of you work for large companies, you know that things can change. They just can. He wasn't trying to play dirty pool. Things had changed. And he said, this is what I promised you. I can no longer do that. Here's what I can do now. And it was significantly less. And I was furious. I was hurt. I was furious. I felt betrayed. I felt ripped off. And he let me feel all of those emotions. He didn't try to ingratiate himself and go, well, if it was up to me. He just let me feel those. And I was angry for about a week, and then I got over it. I accepted my new reality. But here's what I ultimately learned. I ultimately learned that even though I had gotten crappy news from him, I could trust him. I could trust him to give me the real even when it sucked. Even when it sucked. And so if you're going to be a leader, your people can handle the truth. What they can't handle is the runaround. So even when you have bad truth, be straight with them. They can handle it. Also, use simple language. You know, the largest companies in the world, when the chips are down, they move to simple language. Toyota is one of my clients. Toyota does not sell cars. Toyota will tell you that they make cars. Dealers sell cars. So they rely heavily on their dealer network. And Toyota was having a problem with selling trucks. Trucks are a big part of their gross profit volume and a big part of their total sales. And they were having a problem with trucks. They pulled together 30 of the biggest volume dealers in the country and had a meeting with them. It was one of the most high-level meetings I've ever been at Toyota. And they didn't use any PowerPoint, any charts, any graphs. They simply pulled these 30 dealers into a room, and the senior vice president of sales said to them, we can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers. Now, you may not be automotive professionals, but is there anybody here who doesn't understand that sentence or what the problem is? It's pretty straightforward. We can't hit our sales numbers unless we hit our truck numbers. So then once they had the dealer's attention, they followed up with, so what do you need from us to sell more trucks? And the dealer said, well, we could use some more product training. We could use more of the popular vehicles. How about some enhanced advertising? How about some salesperson incentives and some promotions? Asked and answered. The entire meeting took about 40 minutes. Like I said, no PowerPoint, no graphs, no nothing. When the chips are down, go to simple language, lay it out there, it'll work for you every time. And be aware that our differences are real. You know, when we're talking about people not like you, a lot of people think, especially at work, we have to like gloss over the differences and pretend we're all the same. We're not. And those differences can actually really move the business forward. I have a friend of mine who's a retail professional. Like we're talking 25 years in multi-unit retailing. And the first 25 years of his career, he worked for Lowe's. Lowe's Home Improvement. And not to be sexist, but again, this is one of those industries where most of the people he worked with are guys. Why? Because this kind of industry attracts guys. Lumber, hardware, hammers. Yeah, you guys like that stuff. Anyway, so he goes to work for Lowe's and he's top executive there for like 25 years. He's working with all dudes all the time. And then he changes jobs and he goes to work for Sally Beauty Supply. So of course his world is turned upside down. All of a sudden he's working with like all women all the time. It's just the way that business goes. And we go to lunch, you know, he's 60 days into the job. We go to lunch and I'm like, how's it going? And he's like, oh my God. And I'm like, what? And he goes, oh my God, Kelly, oh my God. I'm like, what? And he goes, it's all women. And I go, what? And he goes, they're so different. And I said, tell me. And he said, well, I'm having my first meeting with my new team. He's the regional vice president, 8 executives working under him. And he goes, we're having our first meeting together. And one of my district managers, her sales were in the toilet. They're terrible. They're way off. And he starts talking to her about them and saying, what's wrong with your market? And she starts crying, okay? And I said to him, she wasn't crying. You mean whining, right? And he goes, no, tears. Like actual crying. And I said, oh my gosh, what did you do? And he goes, Kelly, I had no idea what to do. Nothing in my career has ever prepared me for this. Guys at Lowe's never cried over sales, ever. They never cried. And I said, well, what did you do? And he's just a very intuitive guy. What he said was genius. He said, talk to me. Tell me what's going on and how I can help. And if you break this down, it really is genius. Talk to me. Let's have a conversation. What's going on? Let's get to the problem. Not, why are you crying? Which only would have shut her down even more. And solutions, how can I help? And what he found was she was not crying because her sales were down. She's a big girl. She was getting a little emotional. And for some of us, when we get a little emotional, it shows in our eyes. We get a little weepy. And the more we try to hold it back, the worse it gets, right? And she was getting a little emotional because she felt like she was letting him down. That's a big difference than I'm crying over my sales. And once he found out that she was concerned that she was letting him down, he was able to reassure her and say, you're not letting me down. I know you're awesome at your job, but let's talk about what's going on in your district that's affecting sales. So we are different. The following 2 slides are going to change your life. Seriously. It's all rainbows and unicorns from here on out. How to work with women and how to work with men, and also how to sell to women and how to sell to men. So here it goes. Working with women. Women value expansive choices and seeing all of our options. We are not overwhelmed when we're given lots of options. Quite the opposite. We feel empowered. I can look at 175 different colors of blouses And I know I want the tangerine one, and I know it because I looked at all 175, and that's the one I want. Men, on the other hand, want their choices simplified. I'm sorry, you guys, but there's a reason your clothes only come in 3 colors. Okay? Black, navy, khaki. Look at you. Seriously, look at you. The entire, yeah. So, all kidding aside, the magic number for men is 3. 2 is not enough choice. 4 is way too much. Don't overwhelm a guy, okay? So, fun fact, men buy more electronics than any other consumer group. More flat screens, more iPads, more tablets, more phones, more cameras, more stuff. You guys buy more electronics than anybody else. Haven't you ever noticed that when you go shopping for electronics, all of the pricing is done in groups of 3? Even stuff that's not electronics, that's heavily marketed to men like tires, is done in groups of 3. Why? Because it works. So here's how you would use this in business. Let's see. Okay, you're my boss. You're a meeting planner, and you're the boss, and you tell me that I need to go look at site selections, okay? So what's your name? Eminika? Dominica. Dominica's my boss, and so she tells me to go out and do site selections and bring her some options. So I'm going to come back and I'm going to say, Dominica, I looked at 12 different options, and I would like about an hour of your time to walk you through what I learned. All right? She's good with that. You, sir, what's your name? Danny. Danny is now my boss, same exact situation. And I would come back to Danny and I would say, Danny, I looked at 12 different options. Well, let me know when you've got a few minutes. I want to walk you through my top 3 recommendations. Do you see what I did there? I want to get credit for the 12. I want him to know that I did 12. But I also want to narrow it down for him, because he's going to be better at making a decision if I just give him 3. Now, you can use this in your personal life, too. Seriously. It's a game changer. You may not remember me, but you're going to remember this moment for the rest of your life. Yeah. So this is how it goes at my house on a Friday night with my husband. We're tired. It's been a long week. We're incapable of making even the simplest decisions, okay? So this is how it goes at my house. You tell me if you can relate. I have to act this out. I got to get the body language right. What do you want to do about dinner? I don't care. What do you want to do? I don't care. Do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? I don't care. Do you want to go out or do you want to stay in? If we went out, where would we go? I don't know. Do you crave anything? No? Yeah, me neither. If we stayed in, what would we have? I don't know. Do we even have anything here? Yeah. Right? So now, I don't do that anymore. I manage him very differently now. Now I go to him on Friday nights and I just take matters into my own hands and I go, Thai, Mexican, or burgers on the grill? And he's like, burgers on the grill. Done. You're welcome. Yeah. All right, give people what they want. That sounds so simple. But in business, with your own team, if you can give people what they want, you're going to move the ball down the field. You'll see this with large companies. Even Macy's doesn't sell the same stuff everywhere. If you go to Salt Lake City and you go to Macy's, you'll find a larger selection of oversized cookware. Why? Because Salt Lake City is home to the largest Mormon population in the United States. And in addition to having larger families, a key tenet of Mormonism is eating family meals together. So, Atlanta, home to one of the largest black populations in the United States and one of the most devout church-going populations in the US. And at Macy's there, you'll find a larger selection of women's clothing in white and women's church hats, because many black women choose to wear white to church and church hats. So while Macy's sells church hats everywhere, you'll find a larger selection of them in Atlanta. And if you go to Seattle, which is home to the largest Asian population in the US, you'll find a larger selection of both men and women's clothing in smaller sizes, and specifically the inseam on the trousers. Burger King even adjusts its menu. I did, just a quick aside, I did the keynote for the Burger King franchisee meeting last year. They thought it was hysterical that my last name is McDonald. Yeah. They're like, we got Kelly McDonald at Burger King. I'm like, no relation. Anyway, even Burger King adjusts its menu. If you go to New York City, that menu, their breakfast sandwich is served on a bagel. And if you go to Birmingham, that same sandwich is served on a biscuit. So you see the ways that even large companies give people what they want. So from a business standpoint, what do people want? Well, what they don't want is a big, long, honking email. All right? Nobody reads anymore, we skim. If I send you a big, long, honking email, you know what I'm talking about, and you open it up, then what's the first thing you do? Close it. Delete it. You close it because you're like, I'm going to read this later. No, you're not. No, you're not. Would you rather read this or would you rather read this? It's the same email. White space and bullet points are your friends. Because when we look at an email, we're trying to skim through and find out what it is that you want me to do or what it is you want me to know. Right? That's what's in an email, something to do or something to know. And if you organize it with white space and bullet points, it allows me to skim through it very, very, very quickly. And furthermore, it's not intimidating. When I open it up, it's visually pleasing. So if you're going to take the time to thoughtfully email people and compose emails, then don't you want them read? Make it easy for people to read them. Now, again, back to the millennials, kids today, they're the ones who come up with all these things that make communication easier, like the abbreviations like LOL or BRB or TTYL. Maybe you've seen this one, maybe you haven't. It's pretty new. Too long, didn't read. Not kidding. Google it. I didn't make this up. It's a thing. It's a thing. So you send them a big, long email. They're going to come back with TLDR, didn't want, and too long, didn't read. Yeah. So go with it. Agree to disagree. When you are working with and leading people not like you, you are not always going to see eye to eye. In fact, sometimes there might be tremendous obstacles between the way that you see things. Here's how you get around it. These 4 words, I see it differently. I see it differently. What works about this is I see it differently is not antagonistic. It's not judgmental. I'm not saying I'm right. I'm not saying I'm wrong. I'm not saying you're wrong. It's not combative in any way. And I'm not even trying to persuade you over to my side. I'm simply offering a declarative statement of, I see it differently. Look at this graphic. Is that 606 or is that 909? It's the exact same thing, but 2 people can see it differently who are looking at the same thing. So if you say, I see it differently, you're not going to start having a debate. You're going to have a conversation, because if I say, I see it differently, you might say, tell me how you see it. And then we're having a conversation, a constructive conversation. This is incredibly disarming. No one will ever argue with you if you just say, I see it differently. It's going to start a constructive conversation. And speaking of that, take the emotion out of it. The thing is, going back to the whole kumbaya thing, it's nice to think that we are all going to love the people that we work with, but the reality is we're not. We're not. And a lot of companies in their culture, they make us believe that we're supposed to like and love everybody that we work with. But that's not possible. I worked with a guy who was the biggest pessimist I've ever known in my entire life. And I'm an optimist, not Susie Sunshine, but I actually kind of, think the glass is half full and that life is pretty good. He was an incredible pessimist. He was actually the most negative person I've ever known in my entire life. No, I'm not kidding. And this is a true example. If you said, good morning, Jim, he would say, what's so good about it? So he was like a vampire who sucked the lifeblood out of every meeting and every interaction. In fact, everybody at the office avoided him, and they started calling him Eeyore behind his back, right? Because Eeyore's constantly complaining. And everybody just avoided the poor guy. I'm the boss, and I'm trying to lead by example. So I keep thinking to myself, Kelly, you got to like this guy. You got to like this guy, and if you like this guy, you're going to lead by example, and everybody else is going to fall in line behind you, and you will move the business forward. I could not make myself like this guy. No, really, he was unlikable. He was truly that vampire. We would steel ourselves before we would go into a meeting with him. People would see him in the break room, and they'd turn around and walk away. They just didn't even want to interact with him. And then one day I had the epiphany because I was feeling like I was failing. I'm like, if I was a good boss, I should be able to like this guy. And then I had the epiphany that I don't have to like him. Wait a second, I don't have to like him. I just have to work with him. Nowhere in my job description does it says I have to like him. I do have to work with him, and I have to be respectful, and I have to be productive and professional, but I do not have to like him. I don't have to have him over for dinner on Friday night. I don't have to go hang out with him on the weekends. I don't even have to ask him how his weekend was on Monday morning in the break room. I don't have to do any of that. I just have to work with him. So let's see. You and I don't like each other. Okay? Don't like each other. Oil and water, baby. We just do not mix. Okay? No, not yet. Just settle down. Okay? I see it differently. No. You and I don't like each other. We just don't. Okay? But do you think, what's your name? Todd. Do you think that, Todd, that you and I could, even if we don't like each other, that we could sit down and do a budget forecast together? Sure. Of course we could. Because we can just stick to the business at hand. We don't have to like each other in order to perform our job function. So if he and I have to do a budget forecast, we can sit down and we can do that. Free yourself. Free yourself from thinking that you have to like and love everybody you work with. You don't. You do have to be respectful. You do have to be professional. You do have to move the ball down the field. But it's not your job or a requirement for you to like them. And liking and disliking are emotions. You can take the emotion out. I was doing this presentation one time, and this woman comes up to me afterwards, and she goes, you know, I like what you said about that. She goes, I'm on this very informal women's basketball team. We just play for recreational purposes on Thursday nights. And she said, there's about a third of the women on my team that I don't like. I just don't like them. They just rub me the wrong way. But when we get out there, we have a job to do. We play. It doesn't matter if we like them. And I thought that's so true of any team. Think about a sports team. Think about a military team, a platoon, or a troop. I mean, do you think all those people like each other? No way. But they focus on the job, and they get the job done. Lastly, this is super important. 4 more magic words that'll change your life. I need your help. Stop saying, can you help me? And start saying, I need your help. They work very, very differently. Let me give you an example. You, ma'am, what's your name? Cassandra. Okay. So, Cassandra, ask me, Kelly, can you help me?
Kelly, can you help me?
Cassandra, I would love to help you, but I can't. You know, I got to get these numbers to Benny by 3, and you know how he gets when he doesn't get the numbers in time? I got to go. I can't. I really wish I could, but I got to go. Right? If you ask a yes or no question like she just did, the answer can be no. I did it very diplomatically. I had a good reason. It was very professional, but I gave you a no. Right? So now, let's try this. Cassandra, you ready? Cassandra, I need your help. You say,
what do you need?
Boom! What do you need? How can I help? What's going on? This is, we didn't practice this. I can do this with anyone, and I will always get a similar response. Why? Because we are wired. Let me give you a little bit of background. Humans are not designed to live alone. Humans are designed to live together. No matter how primitive the culture, all across the world, we live in communities. In order to live in communities, we have to help each other. We are not designed to live alone. In fact, it's not natural or healthy for us to actually be alone. That is why people who are incarcerated, who get sent to solitary confinement, lose their minds, literally go crazy, because it's not healthy for us. So if we're designed to live together in communities, then we have to help each other survive as a species. And therefore, when I say, I need your help, she is hardwired from a survival standpoint to step up and go, what do you need? It'll never not work. And if she's not the person who can actually help me, let's just say that I tell Cassandra what I need, and she actually can't help me, it's out of her job description or something, then she can turn to me and then turn to the next person and say, you know what? I really don't know the answer to that, but I know that Susan does, and let me get her on the phone, et cetera, et cetera. The bottom line is, she will help. She will always help. So let's try it again. You ask me, I need your help, or you tell me, I need your help.
I need your help.
No. It's not going to happen. You're laughing because it sounds so absurd. It will never happen. It will never happen. I promise you that if you say, I need your help, instead of can you help me, you will get so much further in business. It'll never let you down. So, I want you to take 1 minute. Has this been helpful? Yes. All right, take 1 minute and turn to the people next to you and just discuss one thing that you learned here today that you can go back and apply to your job, and there's no right or wrong. Just take 1 minute, chit-chat. Now, it's the last thing I'm going to share with you. So, if you're all talking, and then I try to talk over you and pull you together and go, okay, everybody, let's pull it all together, then my voice is at the same frequency as yours, like a sound frequency, and you can't hear it. But if I go, shh, you can hear that above all else. And you can bring a room of 2,000 people to complete silence in a matter of seconds. It'll work every time. So try that sometime when you're trying to pull your teams together and get everybody to, be quiet. And don't be doing it like a librarian. Don't be going, shh. All right, nobody wants that. Nobody wants that. So real quickly, and there's no right or wrong, just call out what one thing that you talked about. Somebody in this section over here. What's that? Agree to disagree. And how would you do that? What are the words? Do you remember? I see it differently. Right. Actually, absolutely wonderful. Yeah. Anything else?
Shorter emails.
Shorter emails. Absolutely. How about over in the midsection here and in the back?
I don't like my coworkers all the time, and that's okay.
That's okay. You don't have to like them. Right? No, it's true. Nobody says you have to like them. You do have to be respectful, and you do have to be professional. So let me never lose sight of that. But absolutely. Okay. What else? Managing your husband. 3. And your wife. Absolutely. Absolutely. Just give her lots of options and just go away. She's going to pick what she wants anyway. Yeah. All right. What else? Anything else? Find common ground. It's always there. Real quick, one of the things as a person without children is that I find it just an interesting observation is one of the things that people will do when they first meet is ask, where do you live or do you have children? Because it's common ground. Right? And then also the third thing would be sports. But it's always there. The common ground is always there. Anything else from the back? TLDR. Too long, didn't read. That's right. Okay, let me hear from somebody over here. I need your help. Stop saying, can you help me? And start saying, I need your help. And that will also work with your spouse or partner for sure. Okay, has this been helpful? All right, I took a crack at it. Just to summarize, we talked about a lot of things here. You've been a great audience. 5 things that you can do and remember that don't cost a dime. Expect it to feel awkward when you are working with someone new and different. Just because it's awkward doesn't mean it's not working. Just because it's awkward doesn't mean you're doing it wrong. It's going to be awkward, and then it's only going to be awkward once. And then sooner or later, you're going to find that common ground, and you're going to move to a better place. Have conversations, not debates. Use I see it differently. Adapt to others and their differences. Give them what they want. Men want their options narrowed to 3. Women like expansive choices. And everybody likes a shorter email. Remember that simple language and straight talk will work for you every single time. And use I need your help. So, you have been a fantastic audience. I want to leave you with this African proverb. If you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go farther, go together. So, thank you. I'm going to be around in the expo. I'm going to be doing a meet and greet. I've got a book on the same topic if you thought this was helpful. I try to walk my own walk. It's 140 pages. Right? Keep it short. Yeah. And it was one of the top 10 best-selling business books of 2017. Thank you, MPI. Thank you, IMEX. Thank you, Pinnacle. Thank you, everybody. You've been a great audience. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you.